Ipek Savut, and I recently completed my master's at UNU-MERIT in the Netherlands, and I handed in my thesis on eco-innovation policies in Turkey. So I will talk a bit about that, but before I proceed, I just want to mention that I'm very honored to be presenting among such qualified and distinguished participants, and I have no doubt that this session will be very informative and insightful, and I'd like to thank the network for inviting me. So in my presentation, I want to quickly go over just exactly how we conducted the appraisal. I want to also talk about the country context and mention some features of the governance, some explicit policy documents, and then obviously go over the STIR framework criteria and also mention some key messages. So, like I mentioned, for my thesis, I wanted to benchmark eco-innovation policies in Turkey. And my supervisor, Dr. Türkeli, who is consequently one of the co-authors of the STIR framework, he suggested that I utilize this framework that they were working on, the STIR framework, to conduct my analysis. And he kindly invited me to witness the application of this pilot project, the STIR workshop, that was held in Turkey this past May. And so I was lucky enough to go and take notes and act as a scribe. And so this is us from the day of the project, and I guess our moderator is asleep. He looks asleep, so I guess that wasn't the best picture put up, but I apologize. But he's not here, so it's okay. But so yeah. So in order for the workshop to come to fruition, I think the UNU-MERIT really heavily relied on their local contact, the Middle East Technical University in Ankara and the Research Center for Science and Technology Policy. They were really instrumental in, in organizing the events, and they had their contacts. They sent invitations to a sample of select experts, and I think around 15 experts participated, and their credentials ranged from, a parliamentarian who was in the environmental committee, representatives from the Chamber of Commerce, various relevant ministries, energy, industry, environment. So yeah, and the format of the event was not unlike this one. It was very, so the moderator posed some prompting questions, discussion questions, and the participants were very, eager to give their opinions, and they had heated debates. And Appendix B from the STIR framework, which has prompting questions and tables, was handed out, and the participants, spent the whole day filling them out. They also, if they so wish, they could fill them out later on and, send it over at a later date. And the 12 policy appraisal criteria, including the 4-point scale range and the scoring system, and each point interval was provided for them. So every point was collectively, meticulously discussed to the point where actually the participants were really, by the end, they were really tired. But I think all in all, it was, it was successful. The workshop was also taped. And I believe the workshop was really such a success because I spoke to some of the participants afterwards, and they mentioned that they felt really challenged by the questions thrown at them. It wasn't simply them listening or them being spoken at. It was really an exercise for their brain, as one of the participants put it, and they felt really stimulated and eager to discuss. And I really think one of the main reasons for this, and I believe this, is the rising popularity and visibility of eco-innovation. It's such a, as we discussed yesterday as well, it's such a hot topic. It's very trendy, especially in Europe. And that is spread to Turkey. And the relevant stakeholders, I think, were really eager to jump on that bandwagon. They were genuinely interested. And so the timing was right, and I think we were lucky in that regard. And I find Turkey here to be really an interesting and unique case because it's really a country that's on the periphery of Europe. And historically, its vocation has always been, to the West. The accession talks with the EU, they've been going on forever. And with that in mind, every recent reform made in the name of development has really been in compliance with EU standards and regulations. And I really think this is partially in order to cater to this ultimate goal and desire to join the EU. And I think this has really consistently been in the forefront of the policy agenda. And this can especially be seen in the wording of its national policy documents and government action plans that have incorporated, for example, the concept of sustainable development, in a way that emulates European action plans. And up until now, I think the country context was not, it was not really considered, or it was secondary to simply, milking the current trend on eco-innovation. But I can say that now the tide is definitely turning on that front, and Turkey has really started to acknowledge the significant environmental and sustainability challenges it faces. And it has really begun to see sustainable development as a viable option to its problems. So, the energy sector in this case comes to mind. Turkey has an increasing populations, rapidly increasing urbanization rates, and all the energy obligations that come with the urbanization rates. Its energy sources are, 75% foreign, so there's really a high level of energy dependency. 90% of its primary energy sources come from fossil fuels and coal and gas. So really policymakers have attempted to tackle this issue. And I think two significant events in 2017 have happened in Turkey in this regard. And the scale of these events, I believe, is really enough to possibly jumpstart a transition into a more sustainable society. But it is yet to be seen. And so the events that I'm talking about, both of them are the conclusion of the YEKA tenders, or the Renewable Energy Resource Area tenders. And these are tenders that were held by the Ministry of Energy, and they were regarding the establishment of very large-scale solar panel plant production facilities and wind turbine production facilities. And so the participants in the tender bids really consisted of high-profile international companies, and they were well-established players in the world energy market. So the emphasis, I think, on domestic production within the stipulations of these tender specifications really shows an awareness of the current sustainability challenge and a willingness to remedy the situation and really see the competitive and economic potential with which we hopefully gradually transition to other sectors. But here I will skip through these. Here, the table denoting the aggregate policy criteria. As you can see, there are several scores for the same criteria indicating, I think, sectoral heterogeneity. So the highest scores are for the energy sector, and I think the YEKA tenders that I was talking about really are a testament to this. And these recent developments have really enjoyed a wide coverage within national media outlets, and they've really garnered the attention of the private sector. So in terms of directionality and agenda centrality, there are really positive trends and improvements. And I think these are concrete manifestations of recently written policy action plans, like the National Renewable Energy Action Plan for Turkey, the 10th National Development Plan, the Recycling Action Plan, the Climate Change Action Plan, the Industrial Strategy document. These are all written in 2014 and 2015. So really, you can see, but here on the table you can see that scores that are, you can see the word policy documents. So really, the policy documents really got a higher score, but these policies are not always successfully implemented. And I think in our findings, we found really that there's a lack of enforcement or lack of monitoring and limited impact evaluation in the past. Traditionally policies were were done in an anecdotal manner, but I think really this is slowly changing. So, previously, I'll just give last three examples. They're just some there are some policy documents, for example, the National Renewable Energy Action Plan I was discussing. There are some indicative targets on Turkey, but the same Ministry of Energy also had an electricity market and supply strategy, and they had different indicative targets, even though the two policy documents were published in the same year. So you can really see the lack of coherence there. And yeah, so, but really I think the general consensus is there's an improving trend, but is it just a jumping on the bandwagon and following the trend, or is it really an actual cognitive shift? I think it remains to be seen. And yeah, thank you. And yeah.
Thank you.